of the economy has to be brought into the net in real ways, and it has to be a real effort to do so. And that's what we're trying to work into the budget, into the 2016 budget. When I look at the figures that Dr. Oshikoya has quoted, of course, those figures are huge, and I don't necessarily agree with the cost of the social investment. That's not our own cost, you know. And when you look at, for example, look at the cost of the school feeding. I'm not so sure what figures that is used, but in the states that have tried it, you know, the meal would cost 51 naira per head, right? That's states that have tried it. On the upside, maybe 60 naira per head. When you work that out, it certainly doesn't come anywhere near some of those figures. But there are different figures that have been used. I saw a figure used by another, you know, economist, you know, which came to about 300 naira per head per student. That's what caterers use in Lagos. That's not the sort of thing we're planning. This is homegrown. We're talking of homegrown school feeding, you know, and feeding on a large scale. But anyway, I have digressed. I want to just make the point that for us, really, we cannot, and we don't think there's an excuse for talking about our economy outside of the large numbers of the poor. So we really need to bring them into the net. And that's why we think that a lot of social investment is important. Investment in education, investment in social protection schemes were very important. The conditional cash transfers are important. And frankly, I am persuaded by the argument that, I mean, aside from cleaning up our business environment, and those are other issues, I just want to emphasize the social investment. I'm persuaded by the argument that we need to actually give people some money. We need to really reflate the economy, if you like, by encouraging people to have a bit of money in their hands, especially those who are extremely poor. The conditional cash transfers, for example, one of the reasons why they're important is because you will only get some cash if you have children enrolled in school, and if your children and yourself participate in the immunization, all the immunization programs. So we expect that would increase school enrollment. We expect also that to improve healthcare. But most importantly, we're giving the money to women because we expect that they would manage the resources better. They'll manage the money better. So we think that there is a need, as it were, to bail out the poor as well. And we think that in bailing out the poor, we need to really be able to come up with social schemes that empower them to a certain extent. And the MSME programs and all of that is not going to be restricted to formal types of businesses. We're definitely going down to the market women to try and to empower the market women, give them funds to spend. Those are some of the biting the bullet type things. I mean, I'm sure you had something else in mind.
Okay, I'd like to tie two things together very quickly. One is just taking you up on the social investment and thinking about countries like England and America who have had established social systems and who are trying to pull away from them now. And then I'm saying to myself, okay, we're trying to get there in a system that cannot really be relied on, because soon enough you'll be highly abused and we don't have the sophistication to manage that. And I believe that why aren't we thinking of just empowering those people so they can feed themselves and keep their own honor and dignity and also contribute to the economy, as opposed to giving them money to eat every time? That's just one side of it. But the other side of it that I'd like you to look at together is to, not together, but another issue is to look at diversification. Now, we've talked about, I know a lot of Nigerians right now that hope the oil just disappears, so that maybe we can have a real life and we can really begin to think about and use the talents and the real resources that we have to create a great nation. Now, this government says we want to diversify. Where is the focus? Where are the areas that you really would like to take us to?
Let me start with the social investments. First, I think that every country that has had to account to its people has always had to do some form of social protection. Every country. I don't know any country. I mean, of course, when prosperity comes and many people in society have reached a point of relative stability in their lives, then you must begin to think of rolling back, right? But it's certainly just, there's no way that it can work that you would have the numbers of the poor that we have and you would not do some kind of social protection. On the average, I mean, we know from any of the available figures that just under 1 million people die every year in this country from poverty-related ailments. You know, so you have to ask yourself the question: why are they citizens? I mean, of what use is government to them? Of what use is the Commonwealth to people who die daily on account of the fact that there's just no provision whatsoever for them? And I think that, you know, accountability, that's the first step in accountability. It's easy for us, you know, sitting here to rationalize every aspect of the economy and look at every aspect of it and say, well, this works, that doesn't work. But for the man on the street and for people in all of the various parts of this country, which we had the privilege of seeing as we went around campaigning, there's no question at all that they are completely alienated from whatever we describe as the economy. Many of them they've even lost any hope that government does anything for anybody. And that's why I think it's important that there is no way that you can seriously talk about government if you are not able to address the concerns of the vast majority of your people who have nothing whatsoever. Now the question is, what type of social interventions? What types are affordable? What types can we really do? And that's why we think that the types that we're recommending, we think they have an economic benefit, we think they have a healthcare benefit, all of which are economic. We think that long-term they have important multipliers for the economy as well, you know, and they're picked on that basis. Of course, we can't spend we can't, I mean, given the economic circumstances, we can only implement over an extended period of time. There's no way of implementing even on the scale that we thought possible, given the resources that are available today. But we must intervene socially. There's no question at all. If we don't, I mean, look at universal health care. We must introduce universal health care. Of course, there's a universal health care scheme, but only 6 million are on that scheme. And look at the share numbers. So almost all health expenses are out of pocket for every Nigerian. And most people simply don't have anything at all. So they just simply die on account of the fact that they can't find health care. So we have to do something about universal health care. And because it is not compulsory yet, and because most people cannot pay, government has to invest in the premium for universal health care to a certain, you know, to a certain extent. And then as we go along, we insist on compulsory universal health care and all of that, universal health care insurance and all of that. But that's aside. Now, the other question is a question of diversification. We think that the most logical, you know, is agriculture, first of all. I mean, aside from the MSMEs, which I've spoken about a bit, diversification is agriculture is extremely important. Now, we're working at the moment. I mean, if you look at some of the key areas, you know, we have rice, wheat, cassava, and those sorts of areas. Just as an example, you know, we're working with some of the state governments, about 7 state governments who are directly involved in rice production. In fact, I'm sure His Excellency Governor Bagudu of Kebbi State is here. That's a major rice producing state. And the federal government is working with several of these rice producing states because we believe that if we can be self-sustaining in rice production, first, it reduces the pressure on our foreign exchange because that's a substantial, I mean, we import substantially. We import a lot of rice, almost $3 billion a year. And we think that if we can, over the next 2 years or so, become self-sustaining in rice production, we think that that will help us a great deal. And of course, that whole value chain there's a lot of jobs that will be created in that whole agricultural value chain. As a matter of fact, agriculture, despite all that we say,